Choose to Create podcast.
Yes, sir.
Yep, and it's episode 20, and today sitting here with the legendary.
You funny. Legendary. Okay, if you insist.
Yeah, sitting here with the legendary. I first seen your work in 2012, I believe, at a fashion show A Guy was doing. I don't know if you know who A Guy is.
I know A Guy well.
Design Nation.
Yeah.
They was doing a fashion show. I was taking pictures there, trying to figure out what was going on, and I seen that the pieces of Jamaica.
Yeah.
And my first book I seen from you, and I met G there.
Okay.
I don't even think she remember that, but I did meet her early
funny.
2012, and she was representing the books. And then I started doing my research. Yeah, I've been following your work since then. So, on this episode, we got the one and only David Muir. Appreciate you jumping on the podcast with me, man.
Anytime, bro. Absolute.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, yeah, man, let's talk about it, man. How did you, first, because, finding a topic to even print out a book about, how did you choose a topic to start your book on?
Well, honestly, it didn't start with thinking about doing a book.
Mm-hmm.
I was just living my life. And for clarity, what happened that led to the book Pieces of Jamaica was that as a Jamaican, born, raised, had my main life in Jamaica, and then moving to the United States to live was very impactful on my life. And I wanted to really selfishly keep my memories of Jamaica. So as a hobby photographer, I started just taking pictures of Jamaica. I had no goal, no intention, never thought there would be anything but just memories for me. As I documented it and posted on Facebook or, just different ways, people were saying, hey, these are really great. Where can we see more? Where can we see more? And then that led to me getting my first invitation to do an exhibition of my work. Now, that exhibition was, not so long before you saw the book. It was about 2009. I'd met and spoken with some artists about what they were doing in the industry. And they were, like, hey, you should show your work. Will you be willing? And I was like, absolutely. Like, people have been saying they like the work. I'd love to show it. And so in that sort of evolution, the book came about because I started showing the work. I got great feedback, great commentary about how it connected with people, how they love to see this authentic or really real edition of Jamaica. People have been used to seeing mostly pictures populated by tourism boards or governments or people who had their own interests to share, but they'd never really seen Jamaica from this really authentic, sort of gritty street photography perspective. And so as the shows got more and more popular, it got to a point where we were really doing well. We'd done a couple of solo shows or solo exhibitions of the photography that I'd done, like I said, starting as a hobby. And at some point in that transition, I became much more seriously. I apologize. I thought I had that off.
Sound good.
Yeah.
Make sure I have mine off.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy funny. But so what had happened for me was that now it's off. It was just a natural transition until in one art exhibition, which was held in January of 2012, a book publisher came to the exhibition and saw the outpouring of love for the work that I had on display. We had an opening art exhibition, numbers about around 400 people in attendance, and by the time that show at the City of Sunrise Art Gallery had completed, we'd seen close to 2,000 or over 2,000 attendees to the art exhibition. And the publisher who had visited said, this body of work should be available to people as a catalog. Some way, somehow, it should be a book. Mm-hmm. I had not thought of that at all. Well, I guess it was on my vision board as a to-do thing, but it wasn't like a plan.
Yeah, the top of mind
It
type of
wasn't
thing.
the
Yeah.
top of mind. Didn't know when it would ever be a possibility, but that really sparked my enthusiasm. And so, shortly after the exhibition ended, in February of 2012, I literally took off and went to Jamaica and completed the volume that was displayed in the book. And so the completion was intentional. We took note what we didn't have that we wanted to share of Jamaica. And we went home, got the rest of the images completed, and then the book published later that same year. Because of the sort of synchronicity, Jamaica 50th anniversary of independence was occurring in that year. It was a good time to have a book release, could kind of catch the wave of that excitement. And that's really how the genesis or the idea behind Pieces of Jamaica as a book came about. But it had been through, like I said, years of doing exhibitions and getting, sort of that solid feedback from people saying, "Yeah, this is a good body of work," and then we went all the way.
Yeah. So you went from taking pictures of just your experiences of experiencing Jamaica, kind of just like as a reminiscence for you personally, and then you eventually start printing out some of those photos.
Definitely.
And for the exhibits, because I'm sure you had to print them out.
I had to print them out.
What size? Like, how did you go about printing?
So
like,
when I first
what was your
started
first show experience like? What was that?
The first show experience was crazy. Like, that's really what solidified it for me that I could continue, because I had people. I mean, I printed them pretty much. I'm gonna say, I think the size was 12 by 18. I'm pretty confident that, I mean, that's all I could even imagine at that time. That was like a pretty big print. I was printing these 12 by 18 prints and framing them in these 24 inch frames. And I laugh because the frames probably cost me like $30 each. And I was selling the work for like $50 each at that first exhibition. I mean, I was giving it away. It was like $20 for my time, my effort, everything. And I just didn't know what I was doing, but it was what felt right. And people bought the work. Like, the people were like, "Yo, this is nice." Got a lot of great feedback. I mean, I had, witnessed even one lady literally come to tears looking at one of the pictures. And that really moved me. Like, that gave me the confidence that, you know what, I'm gonna keep this going.
And they would buy the work.
They were buying the work.
Wow.
It was cheap, but they were buying it. Like,
I didn't even realize. I thought when you was all right. So when I thought of exhibits, I thought you just got to show your work where people come out and just like it. But I didn't even think about the part of okay, people are actually able to purchase the pieces.
They were not just liking
That's
it;
cool.
they were buying it. Like, it would be on display on the wall.
Yeah.
People would come in and they'd be like, "Oh, I really like this. How much is it?" Like, $50. I mean, I was ridiculous now thinking back. But yeah, people were like, "Yeah, okay, I want to buy this one." And we're like, "I want to buy this one." I'm like, people want to buy to hang these pictures in their house or wherever they was hanging it. But
Yeah.
it blew my mind. It was a life-changing experience. I mean, well, look at me today.
Yeah.
It's a direct result of that confidence of the people who bought the work and people who commented and shared, how impactful the work was to them to see this really authentic representation of life in Jamaica. And even though people who were Jamaican bought the work, people who were not Jamaican were even more moved by the work. So that was really telling for me. I was like, people really just look at this as fine art, not just me reminiscing my homeland. Yeah.
And that's deep about even the culture, like the culture of Jamaica and the energy. Yeah. Being there is you could see the pictures and that's even with my photography style. I love doing candid and in the moment where it has that kind of energy. And that was what I've always seen with your pictures. That's why I've always was a fan of your work, because it wasn't overly done with the photoshopping and the airbrushing. And at that time in 2012, everybody was airbrushing heavy and doing all that stuff, and yours was the exact opposite. So that was what I was always trying to figure out and learn how to capture those candid moments. So talk to me a little bit about capturing those candid moments while you was in Jamaica. Was it like you were just hanging out with people and then you just snap a couple shots, or you were just walking? And cause I'm sure it was different scenarios, but just
There are a lot of different scenarios, and it's interesting thinking back now, beyond 10 years ago when those pictures were being created compared to today's work. Because I just actually finished completing my second book on Jamaica. And so it's a completely different process. But talking about the original book and doing it, because I wasn't on an agenda, I didn't have a timeline. I didn't know that, I had to get it all done by a certain deadline. Mm-hmm. It was very laid back. So capturing, especially at the time when social media wasn't as popular as it is today, so people weren't recording everyone with their phones every day, taking selfies and that kind of stuff, didn't exist yet. So people were a little more leery of photography of them. Overall, people would be concerned, like, "Hey, why you got such a big camera? What is going on? Are you the CIA? What's up? This is too much. Like, step back." So you had to sort of relax and let people see that you were just chill. You couldn't be too eager to get those photos, because then people would be like, "Yo, hell no, you can't do that." Mm-hmm. So originally, it's a mixed bag. Some people just love to be photographed, but most people don't love to be photographed. And I do attribute that to them seeing poor pictures of themselves, and so they don't want that repeated. I think if people realize how beautiful they are, which people really are, but they just don't know it because they have these bad representations of themselves. So people are very reluctant, and then of course people are suspicious. What are you going to do with these pictures? A lot of the people in Jamaica would say to me, in those years, 10 years ago, what are you going to do with these pictures? You're going to sell it? You're going to, hurtfully, I heard comments like, you're going to make people think we're monkeys, or whatever it was, like, you're going to make a spectacle of us. And I'm like, no, I want to show them how beautiful you are. And people didn't really understand what I meant by that. But it's because I see all the people of my culture as so beautiful, and they don't see themselves that way. So they don't understand the motivation to share that with the world. They think they're being made a fool of. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to honor you. I'm trying to show how spectacular we are as a people, our culture, our everything, the way we look, the way we dress, the way we act, is all just what makes us better than most. It's like it's such a rich thing to be Jamaican and to have Jamaican culture be displayed for its authenticity. I think that's just a really great thing to do.
Okay. Yeah. So like, cause I've done street photography. So it's different. I feel like you gotta have the right energy when approaching them.
Oh, and you gotta have
be like eat a mango with them, or have a coffee
definitely
with them, or something like this.
I did a lot of that.
You have to be personable enough to kind of like get the.
So yeah, I do that all the time, but there are times when that doesn't work though. Because even though I'm very personable and I really like connecting with people, I love the conversations that we have. I would spend like literally 2 or 3 days in a market, hanging out with the vendors selling their wares before I even like started taking pictures, just so they got used to me, just so they were cool with me. I would buy their food they were vending. I would eat with them and do whatever. But there were times I would also lay on the ground in a trench waiting for people to go by to get a certain angle to get a shot that I never spoke to a person. And people were very suspicious. Why is this dude laying in the trench in the dirt with a camera? What is he doing? So it's a lot of different things. Yeah. It wasn't always get to know the person. Mm-hmm. Sometimes
you have to be brave.
Sometimes you have to be brave. Sometimes you just got to shoot them, knowing that you can't have a personal interaction, because then they're not going to be the same. They're going to put on a pretense to be what they think you want them to be. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you just have to do straight candid. So yeah,
How was your experience from doing but let's talk about it. How was your experience from the first one compared to the one you just finished?
Woo!
And how was that experience, the one that you just
night and day? It's completely different experiences. So the first book, Pieces of Jamaica, that you're talking about, that book took me about 5 years from starting to completion. with clarification that the intensity only happened the last 6 months. Because before those last 6 months, I was just doing it as a hobby, as a testament to my country, as a person who loved photography. And whenever I went to Jamaica, that was one of the things that was my favorite thing to do, is to document Jamaica. Having moved away, lived now in America, and going back home, getting that true, authentic sense of what Jamaica felt like as a kid growing up there. Now, this recent project, doing Pieces of Jamaica 2022, 10 years later, completely different experience, because we set an agenda to get the book done in 3 months. Now, 4.5 years versus 3 months is a significant difference in time. So I did not have the luxury to go sit one place for a day, chilling, waiting for something to happen for me to document it. I had to go and make it happen. So a much more intentional process. So knowing that, the interactions were completely different. So it was like on steroids. So if I knew I had to get someone to befriend or become an ally of the project, you had to go right in immediately and just like confront them with it and say, hey, this is what I'm working on. Are you willing to be photographed? Or in the converse, shoot him aggressively, quickly, and then afterwards say, hey, listen, just so you know, this is what we're doing. Are you cool with us using this picture in this way? Because at the end of the day, it's just a completely different process when you know you have, I mean, it took 5 weeks of shooting in 3.5 months, but only 5 weeks of actual shooting on the ground time to get a whole collection of imagery. To do that and to go place to place, we were literally hitting some days 8 locations in a day, some days 2 or 3 locations, but every day had multiple locations. So I'm literally hitting a location, shooting the heck out of it, getting in the car, going to another location, shooting the heck out of it. And to do it at that pace, you don't have time for the relax, get to know the people the same way. You got to get to know them real quick. And so parts of what made it easier is that a lot of the pictures are not just about people. It's about, let's show the beach, let's show where people live, let's show, all these different parts of the environment. But when it comes to people, you always have to take a little time to connect. But we just had to do it a lot quicker this time around. So it was a very different experience, but beautiful nonetheless, because the people are beautiful. And then the additional sort of like thing to throw in there as a monkey wrench is in COVID. So people are wearing masks, people are supposed to socially distance, so nobody even wants you to come up close in this edition, because we're going through the pandemic when we shot this book. Completely different than 10 years ago or 15 years ago, when there was no wearing masks, there was nothing like that, and people were not told to distance. So now in a time of distance and face coverings, it was definitely a completely different vibe. Yeah.
And then in this one, it seemed like you had like a team. I'm sure like when you were doing it the first time, you were just kind of just enjoying yourself. This time you kind of like had a team, because even to have an itinerary where you having 8 different locations to go through on one day, that's a lot of planning.
Oh yeah, completely different. So the first book had 0 planning, and this book was completely planned. Like, it was a team. Island Syndicate, as the publisher of the project, is responsible for setting it all up, setting the vision for the book. It was documented in a particular way and displayed in a particular way according to a specific agenda. And yeah, we had people shooting BTS. We had, like, first time there was no BTS, man. It's like, what even is behind the scenes when you just chilling like that? And so it's very different, and it's great to have a team on a project like this. It makes just a whole tremendous difference. It makes so much more possible when everybody's a different role, Yeah.
And then even with building the vibe of like how you were saying with the people, now it's a little bit, because before with just you. I'm sure with the intention of like capturing this picture. Now it's like a few of you guys, so you guys can kind of like disperse and kind of like work the the scene a little bit.
It's also in a way though a little bit more intimidatory to the people when multiple people are like all around. Everybody got cameras. What's going on? Like yo, like it's different if it's one or two people. When there was a team of people, it's like it's much more intimidating to the people who are being photographed because they're like, yo, this. Y'all look like a gang. What's up with this?
And it's usually what, like three
most
or
of
four?
the times three, sometimes four. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it definitely feels different when it's three people, everyone with cameras. When before, even though it probably always was at least two of me and my best friend, only one person walking with a camera makes a difference. Then now you got three people. Everybody got cameras. Everybody's documenting in a different way. Somebody's doing BTS, so they shooting pictures of us shooting pictures of them. Like that's like freaking people out. Like what's going on?
This man. Yo.
Yeah, a lot of that. That was going on, so you know. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's definitely a big difference between the first project and then this one is like you kind of remaking the experience and with more intention because now you was able to experience it. You was able to look at it and you're like, you know what? I could have did this location. How did you go about picking the locations, man?
So that's part of the process. We have lots of team meetings talking about what's important to show. Like, you know, we could say, and I mean, like it was on our board at some point. Oh, let's get the airports or let's get the seaports. But then, you know, how you get access. Like, you know, so there's a lot of things that we put as high mark. We want to get this and we want to get that. Like, you know, we had on there Vale Royal, Gordon House, Jamaica House, all of these national buildings. But how do you get access? So we asked and we asked and we asked, and we just never got the access. So, you know, it was we could fly the drone over there, but then they might shoot it down because it's like, you're not allowed in this airspace or whatever. So I'm like, you know what? In the end, what we couldn't get, we never
worry
got
about
that.
what you can.
Yeah, we just worried about exactly what we can do is what we did.
Yeah.
Like, no, we could not take on what we could not get access to. So, yeah, a lot of that is. And you know what? I got to tell you this too. There are a couple of things that in the process from book one to book two that made a tremendous difference. So the first time I did the book, when I put the manuscript together, you know, we shared it with the tourist board, Jamaica government arm of marketing the country. And we got a lot of feedback, which wasn't positive necessarily, but explaining that this isn't the vision of what they would market for Jamaica, right? So they weren't really supportive of the project in its authenticity. But having gone through a lot of things since that, having the opportunity to have a successful book on Jamaica made a big difference. So the tourist board, even though I didn't get their full support, the first book, I since then became one of their regular contributors, photographer, to do work for them. And then even most recently, I think which made the biggest difference to making the commitment to do the second book was that we now have been shooting for them. So we now do the marketing images for the tourist board. And so having that type of project under our belt, just last year we spent about 3 months working exclusively on content just for them to market Jamaica. And again, getting their instructions, understanding their desires, put me in a place where it made me say, you know what, I do want to do another book on Jamaica. And giving a more broad view, more than just my personal, hey, this is how I see Jamaica. But let's look at the whole big picture. Let's look at the tourism. Let's look at how others interact with Jamaica. Let's look at the Jamaican interaction. Let's look at the colonial impact on Jamaica. Let's look at the things that came out of the history of Jamaica. Let's look at even more seriously, who are the Maroons and what is it to be a Taino Indian or Arawak Indian, original people of Jamaica. So when you talk about indigenous people, you talk about the impact of slavery, you know, all these things really made a huge, huge difference to me and how I could incorporate those parts that wasn't included in the first book in this book. And again, I got to give a complete shout out to Khalib and everyone at Island Syndicate, whether it's RJ and Raul or Johan or George or people who picked up the slack when I was off doing these things. Work was still coming in and needed to be done, and people who work with my team, like yourself, were able to make it possible for me to go and do this work uninterrupted with focus. And those things make a huge difference. So it's when you look at, all the different parts of what makes this book possible, it's knowing that I could step away from my everyday life and still get that work done without losing a beat on my income of how I survive.
Yeah.
So you talk about the team. The team is broader. It's more than just the people who worked in the book, but it's the people who allowed me to free up my time so I could work on the book. Yeah.
But even with that, man, that's like big. I'm glad I could be a part of that. I'm glad I could play, so I could contribute in some kind of way, man. Because when going back to 2012 when I heard about your book, and one of my guys from Noel Hyatt, he's like, oh, you a photographer? Oh, I know a guy, David Will, and that's started following you. And I eventually met up with you or whatever like that. And the first gig that you had me do, you gave me I think you gave me my first insurance connection for the company or whatever for an event. And then the first event that you had us do was Taste of the Islands. And and then Taste of the Islands was an event where it was a big event. It was like with your event, and it was a big event. It was super, super cool. So they had a planning part, right? So this was like one of the coolest things about it. I've seen your work. I tracked him down. Finally got his phone number, and now I'm about to do this Taste of the Island event, right? So some guy, he's like, "Oh, what's up, RJ?" I'm like, "Bro, how do you know me? Hey, what's up? What's going on? How you know I'm RJ?" Like, he was like, "Oh, your name is in the planning committee book." I'm like, "For real?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Man, let me see that." And then I looked in the book, and it said photographer, and it said my name. I was like, "Oh, shoot, I done made it. I done made it." The whole time, I'm like avoiding you, because I'm like, "Damn, I got pressure on me." I'm like, "This is my first shoot. I got to, prepare and everything like that." So I was avoiding you. And then he's like, "Hey, man, let's link up. I got to talk to you before we go out and shoot the event." And then he basically gave me a rundown of Candid event, how to do that, and I went out, shot it. I came back. We came back and we edited some of the photos at your apartment.
Right.
And that was another level of mind blowing. It's like, bro, you really want to see my pictures, and you gonna give me notes on my edits. So this is mind blowing, right?
Yeah. The
first thing I noticed when I went to the apartment building, right, was your piece, the big printout. So 4 feet by 4 feet, big picture of Buju Banton, big pictures of all different types of artists on stage, and I was like, so I got introduced to Taste of the Islands, right? That big event, and I was the official photographer. I think that was 2018.
18, yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yep. And then also Reggae Reel. So it's 3 things that I want to ask you. First, what gave you the confidence to give a young photographer or another photographer, regardless of young or old, whatever, the opportunity to you don't have to, and you know what I mean? You don't necessarily have to open doors or give opportunities to other photographers to even do well or even mess up, But just having that opportunity was really meaningful.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And a lot of people, I'll tell you this, before I was in photography, I was in the music business for a long time. And I would have people who work with me or business partners, whatever, always question why I was giving so many other people help, or even worse, our greatest competitors help to make them better. Mm-hmm. Because in a sound system environment in Jamaica, everyone's at war, it's a competition. Like you have a whole part of it where it's about killing or dust out or to beat another sound system at what they do. But I've always been someone to help other people because that's just a part of my nature. Like I want people to be successful, and I've never had a problem succeeding personally. So I don't see any reason why I should fear helping someone else. Because what's the worst that could happen? That we would both be successful? It wasn't like I thought I was going to lose my success by giving somebody else a success. And so for me, I always help people. I help. It's a big part of who I am. I love helping people. So when you say what gives me the confidence is that I've been blessed with a lot of people who have given to me in the same way, even though their intention may have been different and or their positioning may have been different. I've had people who don't have anything give me things. And I'm like, so if I have something, giving is easier or should be easier because I have less at stake. Like I remember when I just started in business of music, a competing sound system owner, his name was John Jameson, if it matters, was extremely helpful. He helped me to build my system, to do stuff, and I'm eternally grateful to that person and to that spirit. And so for me, taking that on or doing life in the same way was easy because I was so grateful and I would want to do the same thing for others. And like I said, I've been chewed out a lot of times on why you're so helpful to competitors, but I just know it's the right thing to do. Like, yeah.
And then that speaks to like what 5 years later that now like even what you're doing, like how you just speaking of, like even what you're doing, trips in Jamaica to build this book, you have a whole team that's basically like from that same influence because that same influence is like, okay, well, let's continue that. Like that's what Truth to Create, like that is a spark, that ideal, that ideology of like, yeah, let's build a team of other people that could be on the same level as me, be able to help and bring more value to whatever project that you guys are doing, and they're already like on the same page. They already have that same level of personable and professionalism to them that we expect, from any photographer or videographer, So that's how kind of like Truth to Create. When we started meeting up, me,
Absolutely.
EJ, Christina, that was like the whole kind of energy. So that way it's like always something that we could always kind of like support each other as far as like being a creative,
Definitely. And that's, I love what you're doing and I love anything that's surrounding helping others. I mean, I've done so many different things over the years that have been misinterpreted by people. Like I remember when we started, myself and Michelle McCoy, in, I'm going to say maybe 2010, 2011, we started an event series, Carib Arts Fest, and we did it with the intention of helping artists to get exposure, helping artists to have a way to show their work that wasn't easily available to them. And I found that at that time, a lot of the artists that we were trying to help never understood the intention of what we were doing. They were thinking that we were trying to get glory for ourselves. And I'm like, I don't need that. I don't need somebody else's glory. I'm just trying to be someone who shares the opportunities of the glory I've already received. But a lot of times people don't get that. And so, it's not always successful that when you want to help people, you're able to help them. But fortunately, there have been lots of good times when, like you said, I think the fact that we're even talking right now and the position you're in, to bring me into your podcast is sort of that same spirit of giving love and light to other people so that we can all rise up together. So I'm 100% behind that.
Hey, man, I appreciate it, man, for sure. That's what it's all about, having that spark that it just kept going, and that's what it grown into now with, what we're doing. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And it's crazy to see like how fast, like even with Raul, he's out there in Puerto Rico doing.
I know, man, he's killing it.
It's like every time we on the podcast, we have to be like, hey, Raul's out of town in another country doing it big somewhere,
That's beautiful. I love it.
And that's all from like a spark from like you being like, yo, take down my number. You didn't even know Instagram. You're like, take down my number. I'm like, oh shoot, for real. And I was trying to connect with you for like 2 or 3 years before that. I was like, oh shoot. All right, cool. Now I'm gonna follow up. You gave me your number. I'm gonna follow up, and it goes from like having that spark, bringing in I shadowed you on like two projects, 2 corporate event projects, and one of them was like you was doing like a lot of headshots, and what I've learned with doing headshots is like one, you have to be yourself, be comfortable within your own self, and you have to have some kind of personality, have some type of cues. How did you like learn that, or what was your process in like? Is that something you were just like, you know what? I got these cues because I know you have your go-to. I have my go-to now too. Even when I do events, I have my go-to. Like, get together, act like you know each other. Act like, or I walk up to somebody and be like, hey, do you know this young man? It's like, yeah, that's my husband. I'm like, oh, yeah, but act like it. Like I have my little cues. Like, how did you go about getting your
I don't know, man. Like that's too easy. Like you say, how did I get it?
Yeah.
Trial and error, man. Like, so, again, I don't want to make it all about me being a people communicator or connector, but I love people. I really do love people. And so I love to engage people. I love to have that spirit with people where I'm like, hey, this is how I connect to you. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing that my whole life. So using that in photography, it's natural. There's no part of it, like you said, it's being yourself and trial and error. And what I mean is like I didn't get this where I am today. Day one, I tried it. Oh, that didn't work. Ooh, okay, try it another way. Oh, that works. And then hey, repeat it and then expand on it. Like grow your own capabilities because the more you meet different types of people. The last 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week, I've been shooting for the Bahamas Tourist Board. And part of what I was doing for them was, I was shooting their deputy prime minister, all these, top officials, and they all have different personalities and they all have different expectations of what you can do that still remains professional. So like I could be very jokey, but I have to reserve a little bit part of that side of my personality when I'm with certain people or certain dignitaries because they may not see it as professional. So you have to find ways to fit in between those little things, little cues that don't throw them off, but then also gets you to get the type of interaction and reactions that you need to get great images. So it's practice and more practice. And when one thing that worked 5 years ago don't work no more, then try something else. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a big part of even how I use the name Sexy Man. The first time I said it out loud was in or certainly in a professional space. There was shock and alarm. Like, what did he say? Like, there's no way in this business meeting this man just identified himself as Sexy Man. But I took note of all the interactions, and then I started testing it one-on-one. When I said, people introduce myself, what's your name? Sexy Man. What's that? How you spell it? SEXY, Sexy Man. Like, But then you learn, like, when to use it, when not to use it. Because, again, I could get everyone in the room to be cracking up and to give me a certain type of energy by what I say to them. They don't realize it at first, but I'm just gaining interactions. Mm-hmm. I'm making content to give back to them. It's not about trying to be vulgar. It's not about trying to gain attention for myself, which I do love attention for myself. But that's not what it's about. It's really about how do I get people to give me the interaction that I can document that they'll pay me really well to keep doing it. Like, that's what it's about.
That's the as photographers and new photographers, those little parts people miss out on. They so focus on the f-stop and all those things. The technical stuff matter, but having those cues, getting people that get their true personality, so you could capture the type of images they want. Like how you said, like Sexy Man, it gets them to be like, laugh or like, but that gets you the shot that you need, and just knowing how to balance. You got to be personable because you're in.
And you know what? It's not even just about the shot that I need now, but by making that declaration, it puts people in a certain space to interact with me, knowing this dude can't be for real. He's a joker.
Yeah.
So let me joke with him.
Yeah.
And it set the whole template for how we interact for not just this 2-hour event. But the next 2 years, they see me every time they see me say, "Oh, you the sexy man, you crazy."
They start laughing. Yeah.
And that whole interaction, I won the trophy. I got what I need permanently. And so people don't even recognize some of those little things. They have much deeper intention.
And that's how you because even now you see I'm interviewing or interviewing, right? So one of the things that I always say in one of my interviews is "Oh, I'm Roper. I'm Oprah little cousin, RJ. Oprah. You know what I mean?
I love it. Yeah.
That's one of my things. But it's just once they hear that, it's or I come up with something else, and it's just to set the mood, it's okay. And that's one of the things that I've learned around you as being a photographer. It wasn't just the technical things. There's those subtle things as well, where it's professionalism is to the extreme. On the professional side, what I've seen and learned from you, you're very detailed, very highly professional, and and communicate this very clearly to them. So you establish the professional part, but the personality part, being very yourself, So that's what I had to learn as a photographer as well. Is at one point I was way too professional that I wasn't myself. And then that's something that I learned as well. The more I started being myself, well as having that level of professionalism, because they have to listen. You have to give instructions, and you want them to listen to the instructions or the advice that you tell them to do for the image that you need to capture.
Definitely.
So that's a little thing that I feel a lot of people breeze over. But that's a whole art.
It is. It really is. And it's good, and it's good to talk about it and good to share it so we can have more great photographers. There's never enough work, but there's always too much work. People always want more work. Right now, I cannot even manage a quarter of the work that I have because there's tons of work. You just have to know how to ask for the work or how to earn the work, but there's no shortage of work. So you never should fear competition because the truth is, the more easy they make photography to do, is the more we need great photographers to execute it. Because you mentioned, it's good to have your settings right and all that. You could have the most automated system where you don't even have to set anything. You just press one button and it takes a great picture. But you got to know how to get that great picture. You got to learn to set it up. You got to learn to be in the right place. You have to learn to get the right angle. And there's a lot of other parts than just settings. So and even after cropping and editing and all these different parts, there's so many aspects to good photography. There's always going to be a great need, as long as the world is driven by marketing and driven by social media or anything, for there to be images that stand out beyond the others. Because now that there's so much more people doing personal photography with their phones, you'd think, now there's no need for a photographer. No, there's a greater need so that the images that are going to inspire people to spend their money stand out from the ordinary pictures. And I say ordinary meaning great looking, because the technology in the phones now blows the mind, but they don't know technically how to make people want something or how to inspire them to action by creating the right photo. Yeah. So, there's always space for work for people like you and me. Yeah. Always. Yeah. And more work than we can manage. I mean, so much work. Thank goodness.
Yeah. And I'm glad for it, because I'm here for it. I'm here for it. And that's even what we do even more. If it's somebody's gonna be there to assist. I want to touch a little bit down on reggae Reggae Real? Is it? Yeah, Reggae Real, man.
So
That's the
there-
second. Is that the
there's-
second exhibit? Like, how did you get there?
So there,
Like, because that's one of my favorite ones too, man.
right. So here's the thing about you say Reggae Real. Reggae Real is an important one. There's also, you know, there's a show that's an important show in this story. So it's called Let There Be Reggae, which is
Let There Be Reggae.
So Let There Be Reggae is a show that we do for Art Basel every year. So Art Basel is in Miami every year. They're in two places. One's in Europe, one's in South Florida. So for that particular show, I've been doing shows at Art Basel of my work for now over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank goodness I'm alive to talk about all of this work that's been done. But about, I don't know, now 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I don't remember when it actually started, Alan Jean, who's a Haitian American, who's an absolute lover of reggae and reggae culture, put together this concept that he wanted to do art exhibition tribute to the reggae music. So, you know, he spoke to people, and at some point they pointed him in my direction. So he and I, you know, worked to sort of author that first ever Let There Be Reggae show, which was phenomenal, and we did many phenomenal years since. But as a function or result of that work, so I've been doing concert photography because, again, being background in music, lover of reggae music, lover of concert photography is probably my absolute favorite photography to shoot. I already have a store of great images of reggae performers. So having had the chance to start showing that body of work led me to have the opportunity. I was invited to do my own solo show of reggae culture. That spawned Reggae Reel, which was now my reel of reggae.
Was that intentional, or was that happenstance of something that you've collected of just the things that you love, or was that like before you started doing concert photography? Like, I'm gonna build a whole
That's intentional.
catalog.
Yeah, that's pretty intentional. Yeah, you know, I mean, I love it so much. Then sure. The problem with it is, for me, I would say problem, not a real problem, is that I don't think that reggae photographers really get appreciated. I don't think they get love for the work that they do. But I know so many great photographers in the reggae industry that I've not only, even before I ever did Let There Be Reggae, or before I ever did Reggae Reel, my own collection, I had done shows of my work and invited other reggae photographers to participate. So by the time we got around to Let There Be Reggae and being a annual exhibition, I already had a cadre of photographers and other people in art in reggae music to include. So that was pretty easy. So the first year, super. Second year, super. At some point, I got invited to do my own separate show. So I think the very first one, Reggae Reel, must have been in Pompano Beach. So the city of Pompano Beach invited me to do an art exhibition of my work. They were open to which body of work. And I said, well, if you're open, I'm going to choose to do my reggae show, because that's really so near and dear to my heart. And I already done so many pieces of Jamaica shows and so many other iterations of the work that I've produced. There's another collection of work, I would mention it here. It's called Portraitic Perspectives. But that's not relevant to this topic. But I will say that was also very instrumental. It's a series of work that I did to celebrate Black women. So, you know, a lot of what inspired me was the first book, Pieces of Jamaica, taking pictures of women in Jamaica who thought they were unattractive. And I was like blown away. Some of the most stunningly beautiful women just thought they were not attractive. And I could not deal with that well. So I said, I'm going to do a series of portraits to show Black women how beautiful I see them. And so that spawned its own exhibition. But separately, Reggae Reel, I got this opportunity. City of Pompano Beach said, hey, we want to do a show with you. And again, kudos to any of the cities. I've done city shows multiple places who make space for art and to display art and to celebrate artists and to pay artists to celebrate artists. I think it's fabulous and a lot of honor to, I mentioned earlier, City of Sunrise gave me the opportunity with Pieces of Jamaica that led me to a book. And then, like I said, in this particular case, doing Reggae Reel, having the opportunity to show reggae music and my love of reggae musicianship in that way, in a solo show, completely paid for and promoted by someone else, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
To share my culture in that way, and even a subculture of my culture, it's like,
yeah,
that's magic. It's
Yeah.
straight magic.
Yeah.
So so it was intentional because it's how much I love it, and I do push it. But I've also been fortunate to gain opportunities that made it possible.
Yeah. And like for me, as before working with you, right? I never even thought of, because we grew up in the digital age, so I never even thought of doing exhibits and having arrays of books, whether it's like Pieces of Jamaica or whether it's Perspective, the
portrait series or any of that stuff.
series or Reggae Reel. I never really quite looked at it like that until I seen that 4x4 picture of Buju Banton. So I wanted to ask, like, what would you say advice as far as like being able to choose like any photographer or young photographer or me, a direction as far as like an exhibit or creating a book?
Well, there's a lot of advice I'd give you. I want to make a comment first about you saying this 4x4. So I have some even bigger than that size. I have some pretty large prints. But when I first started doing exhibitions, as I said to you, I was doing first maybe the biggest I would have done was a 12x18 print. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was big because I grew up seeing 4x6s and 8x10s and thought those were big. So when I was doing 12x18, I was like, oh, look at me now. Like, I got big work. So I was doing one of my exhibitions, and another photographer came and said, I see your work, it's nice. Do you have any large ones? I'm like, these are large. He's like, this is not large. He's like, you should do some large prints. And so I was like, huh? What's a large print? And so I explored how to make my work larger, and that's how I started doing like 20x30s, and that's like the largest size you can print on paper, or was back in the time when I started doing those. And then I was like, well, how can I print even bigger? Like, oh, you could print on canvas or on tiles or on zinc or on glass. I was like, what can I do? Like, this is blowing my mind. So I started doing works, like you said, 4 feet by 4 feet. I was doing 48s by 48s. I was doing 40 by 60s. I've done some pieces like, 8 feet wide and even bigger because someone advised me that you are allowed to do that or that you should do that. Like, yo, your work's nice. Why don't you print big? I was thinking, I already am printing big, but I hadn't opened my mind to a different possibility. Mm-hmm. And so that just, this is really good for me. But as for advice I'd give to anyone who's thinking of an exhibition or a book or anything, you got to go with your passion, because anything else is not going to move people. Like, let's pretend that you're, the thing you're most passionate about is a mixing board, like right in front of us. Then go deep, because you're going to find 10 other people just like you who love mixing boards. Don't think, because everybody you've talked to tells you that, what they're really into is TikTok. You're going to go do an exhibition of TikTok. Forget that. Follow your own intuition, follow your own passion, and go after what is important to you. That's what I did with Jamaica, Pieces of Jamaica. That's what I did with Reggae Reel. These are things that are deeply important to me. And just like I said, when I did that portrait series on black women, because black women are deeply important to me. And every step that I take, that's something that's meaningful to me, has been successful. And when I try to fake it and try to do something because I think it's what's popular, it typically goes nowhere. You get me? Like, people always say to me, when people will buy pictures of flowers. I have no interest in flowers. Every time I take pictures of flowers, and people are like, they're all right, but it's not my thing. I'm not in it. So if I'm not in it, how am I going to do that well? if either I need to pick up a hobby growing plants or something, or do what is important to me. And that's what I think is my best advice. It's like, do what moves you. If you do that, you're going to be successful.
That sounds like some sound advice right there. But yeah, man, I appreciate you kicking it with us, man. So we have Island Space.
Yeah.
Right? Island Space took about what? I think about 6 months to happen. So, but first it was
it took many years, but it did take like 6 months. So it depends on how you look at it.
It took about, I say, to build up the momentum, and that's one thing that I do like, and that's why even with this podcast, that's why I kind of like went and done it, because like it's already in me to do that, but like you do that as well. Like whenever you have an idea,
every time
you kind of act on it, and you
just
been doing it with the museum. It was a mobile museum.
It was
the culinary museum.
It was culinary, and again, you mentioned Taste of Islands before.
Yeah.
So Taste of Islands, we did a pop up inside of our event of a culinary museum, and another event producer, Jerk Festival, came and he was like, Eddie was like, "Yo, this is nice. Like, can you bring it to our festival?" We were like, "Sure." We never thought of that, but then it became traveling, and then we did it there, and then we applied for a grant with the county, and they approved it, and we got to take it from just going from our festival to Jerk Festival to then it was like on tour in the county. And I wouldn't be fair if I didn't say the Community Foundation of Broward, amazing organization here locally that supported our efforts to make this real. Like, so the county themselves gave us a small grant. I'm going to say it might have been $2,500. It might have been even less to first start even doing it. And then we were able to get a pretty sizable grant from the Community Foundation of Broward to then take it really on the road for a while. So we had a year-long traveling museum, but again, it was just culinary. And then people were seeing it and saying, but hey, this is great, but we're more than just our food. What else you got?
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Connect right back to
we go back to the drawing board. We do this. And so now, again, the absolute first ever Caribbean museum in the U.S. anyway. I think it's a first in the world, but I'll just say definitively it's a first in America. And to be a co-founder, an idea starter for something like that, looking back, it felt very organic because the need was there. We just did it. And it's just a great testament to living without fear and doing what you know is right. If you have an idea, man, it's like go for it. You know, like what's the worst that could happen? It could just end up where you didn't have what you didn't have before, or on the flip side, you could end up with something spectacular. I mean, even just looking at the museum that we opened in 2020 and looking at the museum as it is today in 2022, it's like night and day. It's like the displays have gotten better, the technology's gotten better. Just everything, just grow with it. You know, it's like there's a lot of good stuff.
And I'm gonna get to it as well. Taste of the Islands. When is that coming back, man? I need. And even elaborate so people know what Taste of the Islands is. Like,
so my business partner, Khalib Thompson, is a little genius too. You know, she's she's good people, and she started the first ever. I love these first ever things. So she started the first ever Caribbean culinary TV show on PBS, and that PBS television show was called Taste the Islands, starring Chef Irie at first, and then by season 2 it was starring Chef Irie and Chef, I want to say Chef Cynthia Verna. Her chef name is Chef Tia, but her real name is Cynthia. So anyway, so oh my goodness, this, the whole project of all of that, how we ended up with I'm going to say the annual culinary event was that neither of the two starring chefs on the television show had their own restaurant. And so people were asking, well, where can we get the food that you have on a television show. And we were like, well, we have Taste the Islands, the TV show. Let's have Taste the Islands, the experience where you can come and eat the food. And that's literally what it was like. And I'm going to tell you a funny follow-up story to that. So people asking about where can they get the food spawned the whole annual food festival. And then the food festival, once we did the very first one, we had what we were calling a I guess a program for the event. And that's Island Origins, a magazine. Now, we didn't know it was a magazine because we just did a program. People saw the program, they're like, yo, this is amazing. When is the next issue coming out? We're like, next issue, you want to do this? Yeah, 3 months, it'll be out, next issue. Like, we had no plan to do that, but somebody asking a question, where's the next issue coming out? We was like, okay, yeah, it's real soon. We're going to do it quarterly. And so 5 years later, we've been doing the magazine, still going strong. Amazing how things turn out, because I never thought we were going to have a publishing company. Now we have a publishing company. Mm-hmm. It's just wild. Like the way things grow is like, answer the questions people are asking. If the public asks you as an entrepreneur, hey, where's this? Or how can I get this? Then use that as a spark to say, well, I know how I can give that to you. Let me make a business solving the needs of the people. And that's really how all of this comes together.
Yeah, that's dope, man. Island Origin, the magazine, Taste of the Islands.
Taste of the Islands, Island Syndicate, the business,
Island
everything.
Space.
Island Space. It's like, it's nice. It's nice to grow up with this stuff.
And it's so even better to be a part of it. Like, for me, I like capturing and being a part of Taste of the Islands, as well as like seeing the idea spark. A lot of the stuff that's already been it was already there before. But being a part of it still, I've seen a lot of ideas that were just like spoke about and then actually happened within 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's one of I love seeing that so much, like ideas, conversation, plans, and then execution.
And there it is.
Like,
like,
we're moving in to a museum space? Yes, we're moving in. Help me move. I'll be there. Let's go. I'm like, what?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I wanted to just say, man, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast with us, man, and definitely appreciate you, everything that you've been doing, especially with the connection, advice, the business, everything, man. I used to just be riding with you and just learning, just peeping. I just be peeping. I'm like, man, I'm learning. You feel what I'm saying? And like,
but the good thing is, you was learning and now you executing too. Like, that's the thing. I love to see when people learn and then they just grow and do their thing. Like, and that's the beauty of what you're doing. You're doing your podcast. You're doing Choose to Create. You're doing the monthly meetings to help others in the industry to gain more confidence, to gain more knowledge, and to be able to do what you're doing. And to me, that's the win-win-win. If I can inspire you, and then you can inspire another, and then they can inspire another, that's how we're going to grow all of this. And we just give each other love. Like, it don't even need to be financial love. People get caught up in the, what did I get in my hand? Nah, just this right here. I'm not getting nothing for this, but you giving me a whole next level of love in the same way I gave you love from day one. Like, and that's the thing. If we can just continue that and show this true, like, sharing spirit, giving, love, that's what's gonna make the whole creative world and the rest of the world just better. Mm-hmm. Like, we could just all just give without thinking what's gonna come back to me, and then look and see, look at all this fruit that came from the giving I was giving out, and now here's the fruit coming back to me. Like, I didn't even plant that mango tree, but now I got mangoes because I told the man, hey, I think the soil over there is a good soil. And then all of a sudden, now I got mangoes. I didn't even do no planting. That's the beautiful thing. So that's what I feel here. It's like where we can just give to each other without thinking of what we're going to get back, and then see all this bounty. It's like manifest. Like, I know that I don't have to think. If I need 1 or 2 or 3 extra photographers, I can just say, yo, choose to create. That's my people. RJD, come on down. And like, that's just beautiful. That's the best way to do business for me. Like, I know not everybody thinks like me, but for me, that's golden. It's like being able to grow a team without even growing a team, just by being good people. Yeah, that works.
Nah, definitely, man. I appreciate you, man. And that's Choose to Create podcast. Yo.